Welcome in, everybody, to Betting Pros. It's time to place your bets. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and this is BP NFL. Joining me every single Tuesday is my man, the data scientist, Sam Hoppen. We're going to take a look at the lines that might move, the stats that are going to make a difference, and give you a pick to survive in all of your pools. But before we get to all of that, breaking news earlier this morning, Sam Hoppen, I will say that Andrew Erickson and I did predict this. Joe Stradamus was working yesterday. And again, it did take a genius to figure out that the Bears were going to make a change somewhere, and they did. Offensive coordinator Shane Waldron out. So what does this mean now when they get rid of the OC here for this Bears offense? Do you see any turnaround possible from some of the data that you've seen of some of the things they've done? And what do you think that new Bears offense might look like?
Yeah, I honestly don't know that this changes the outlook for the Bears that much. I mean, they need to radically shift what they're doing on offense from what they had been doing. I am by no means a scheme expert. I know the new offensive coordinator going to be calling plays, Thomas Brown. He was under Sean McVay for a couple of years, but also was with the Panthers last year, who had one of the worst offensive lines, offenses and offensive lines. And so if you're trying to draw inspiration from that as a Bears fan, I don't have many great words for you. But again, it's one of those things where something had to change. And it did. I still think until they make a change at the top with Eberflus, that this Bears team is going to struggle. And they have one, I think, the most difficult strength of schedule the rest of the way. We talked about that last week. They still have all of their division games against the Vikings, Packers, and Lions. First one starting this week against Green Bay. So it's going to be tough sledding for them the rest of the way.
Certainly is. I already locked in the Green Bay number earlier yesterday. So everybody knows what I think of that game. And if you want to go check out that look ahead, go back and watch on our YouTube or listen to wherever you get your pods. And don't forget, also, we've got a giveaway, too, before we start getting into the meat and potatoes of the show. The signed Mike Evans Buccaneer helmet can be yours. Again, free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com. All you need to do is head to bettingpros.com/contest, complete the form, and either download the Betting Pros app, leave a review of the Betting Pros podcast, or subscribe to our social media channels at Betting Pros on X, on TikTok, and Betting Pros NFL on the IG. The more actions you complete, the more entries you receive, and we'll be announcing the winner right here on the channel. So subscribe to Betting Pros YouTube and ring the bell for notifications so you never miss an episode, and you can claim your prize of the Mike Evans signed Buccaneers helmet. He hasn't used it in a couple weeks, so we decided to just give it away. All right, let's get to some of the lines that we're keeping a close eye on. Let's start with the 49ers and the Seahawks. The 49ers, Sam, did get CMC back. We saw a little Ricky Pearsall action. We saw a really good game from Brock Purdy, and this feels like another game potentially for Brock Purdy to go over some of those passing totals. That was one of my favorite props last week. I logged it in Betting Pros for people to see. And going forward this week, too, I think a lot of questions are hovering, too, about the health of DK Metcalf. And basically what you saw last week, how much can we apply to potentially what is going to unfold in this contest in Week 11?
Yeah, so obviously no major quarterback injuries here, but there are a ton of health question marks for Seattle on offense. You mentioned DK Metcalf. It sounds like McDonald is optimistic that he'll be able to play on Sunday, but I think still needs to get through practices this week. Noah Fant on offense at tight end as well. He missed their last game prior to their bye. And then on the offensive line, both Abe Lucas and George Fant are currently questionable. So that's four key players, again, in two sort of different batches, one on the offensive line and one at sort of the playmaker position, where if two of Abe Lucas and Fant don't play, or both Metcalf and Noah Fant don't play, then there's a scenario where I think this, I don't know if it's enough to cross the sevens. San Francisco currently 6.5-point favorites. That's about where it opened. There were some sevens in some places, but those injuries, I think Metcalf and the offensive line injuries are obviously the most impactful. But the last time we saw these two teams play, San Francisco blew the doors off of Seattle.
Yep.
But that was what felt like months ago. They the 49ers effectively replaced Brandon Ayuk with Christian McCaffrey, not one for one, but they had Ayuk in that game, now have McCaffrey in this game. And so there's a little bit of shifting going on there. Again, you mentioned Ricky Pearsall, who has come on pretty well in the last couple of games. So I honestly don't know if this line shifts that much. I think if anything, money comes in on the Seattle side, and there's some market resistance at the 7-point spread for Seattle.
I'm actually comfortable at home with the 49ers and the 6.5. My only caveat to that is some of the things I saw in that kicking game last week too, that were, those are the kind of things that creep up on you when guys aren't making kicks, or all of a sudden, that's how those points start to dissipate. And that's when you start getting into tighter games than you want to be in. That's
Yeah.
the only thing that gives me pause. But I think I'm just going to, as Terrell likes to say around here, just kind of close my eyes and bet it. That's
Yeah. The 49ers red zone efficiency has been not great by any stretch of the imagination. And Kyle Shanahan has always been one to be comfortable taking field goals. And who knows if that change, last week's results and the poor kicking changes things for Shanahan, but that is something to keep an eye on, potentially a live betting angle if the 49ers are continuing to get into the red zone against Seattle, but not finishing drives, potentially hoping that San Francisco can convert on some of those drives and taking them live against the spread.
We got some big games on the slate, including Bills Chiefs, which we're going to get to a little later. But before we do, we're going to talk about the Steelers and Ravens. Now, this is one, typically, we talked about this again yesterday, Andrew and I, usually looking for the under in this game. But this doesn't feel like, your father's Ravens Steelers situation here, with the way that Ravens secondary is played, the way Russell Wilson's starting to throw the ball more effectively, and a lot of chucking and ducking going on there. I kind of like the over here, and Andrew was very uncomfortable with that, and I'm uncomfortable with it, but it just feels like that's the state of these two teams. So how much does history play into when you're looking ahead here and trying to live in the now and place the wager in week 11?
Yeah, so I guarantee there are going to be people talking this week about the history between these two teams. It's a classic AFC North battle in the middle of November. It's always close and low scoring, but I don't think that matters. These are two different teams from what we've seen in the past. Pittsburgh is getting probably some of the best quarterback play they've gotten since Ben Roethlisberger retired. The Baltimore defense is not what it was. I've talked at length about them in the past. This game opened at a total of 46.5. That's already been bet up to 48.5, past the sort of soft key of 48. But Baltimore profiles as an over team. Their offense is a juggernaut. I don't think that really any defense is slowing them down at this point, and their defense is a pass funnel. What has me nervous about betting the over in this game is Pittsburgh's run-heavy approach. They are 31st in pass rate over expectation this season, and Baltimore has a great run defense, one of the best in the league. So if Pittsburgh is leaning into the run early on, I don't know that they're going to be able to sustain drives, and that's going to kill this over. So I think if the line gets back down under 48, then I think 47.5 is probably a buy point for me for the over. But again, if we see Pittsburgh start to lean into the pass early on in this game, then I think for sure this game goes over.
Yeah, you mentioned the prolific offense of the Ravens. That's just kind of where I'm living. And the angle of Najee Harris, and a little bit of a question too. I wonder how much they can rely on that run game necessarily for Pittsburgh. So you're right. The approach is definitely try to keep Lamar Jackson off the field as much as you can. But it just feels like in the second half of this game, you might just get into one of those dogfights. And that just seems like where the Ravens have been living in some of these games when they play better teams. And we'll see. Again, history is strong on the under on this one, but I just can't seem to, I can't seem to shake what I've seen so far in 2024. Also, what I've seen in 2024 are the Detroit Lions kicking ass and taking names. And typically teams, especially when they win big games on the road or have emotional victories, there's always those letdown games, right? And normally I would say this is the perfect letdown scenario, except for the fact that Dan Campbell seems to never take his foot off the gas with these guys. And, you go back a couple weeks to that Titans game, the last time we saw a big double digit spread for the Lions, right? They crushed it threefold. So it wasn't even a contest. And I feel like he's taken the concept of that trap game out of the equation because he's such an intense coach and he's got them so prepared. And there were a lot of imperfections in that win. So I don't think it was a win that, despite the fact that they came out with the victory at the last second on the field goal and all that stuff, there's a lot I think you take away and say, man, we need to do a lot of things better in that game. So I think that all works in their favor. And I don't care if Lawrence plays. I don't care if it's Trevor Lawrence playing quarterback. I don't care if it's Martin Lawrence or Sarah Lawrence. I don't care who's playing quarterback. I don't think the Jaguars can keep up with them. I think this is actually a comfortable number. I've already bet it. But Sam, what do you think about Lions Jaguars? Do you think if Lawrence does play, this one changes at all?
Yeah, I mean, if Lawrence does play, and I at this point doubt he does. There were reports late last week that there's a chance he just doesn't play the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But if he does, he's still a massive upgrade over Mac Jones. We saw how poor this offense was last week with Mac Jones against the Vikings. I think if I remember correctly, they only had like 150 yards of offense.
It's
Like
brutal.
the only reason that the Jaguars had any amount of success was because they got the turnovers against Sam Darnold. So I think again, if Trevor Lawrence plays, this number probably gets closer to Detroit by 10, something like that. It's currently, you can find 12 and a half, 13 and a half out there across the board. There's not a lot of market consensus right now, but this line will certainly move if Trevor Lawrence plays. I know that the Jaguars don't have a lot going on for them right now, but it certainly can't get worse with
Listen,
Trevor
man.
Lawrence.
Even if Lawrence plays, I think I mean, that's great. Set the custom line alerts. Again, download the Betting Pros app. This is a great game to set the line alerts for. Again, we could follow the certain lines for the certain uh, contests for the week. It's a great addition on the app there. If you haven't used it, sync your sports books for free. And also, another thing you can do there, don't forget about the Betting Pro Systems also, because the new Betting Pro Systems tool is designed to help you find winning strategies. I don't know if you saw this, Sam. There's a guy that created a system for wide receivers, and it's 45-0. Mike Mayer tweeted it out the other day. I couldn't believe it. So obviously there's people worth following and doing some good work over on the Betting Pros side of things. So you can customize your betting systems by sport, bet type, and time frame to make the best bet you possibly can using real-time data and expert analysis. So track the performance of different betting systems over time and optimize your bets to increase your chances of success. Again, download the BP app today. Use the systems, use the line alerts, use all the tools to make you a smarter, better. Let's take a look into the future here for a moment. Anything here that strikes your fancy that you think maybe people should be looking at, maybe in the NFC, trying to scratch and claw their way to the playoffs, because it does seem like it's the Lions and everybody else right now.
Yeah, so the NFC playoff picture is actually pretty interesting. So looking at the current standings and where the teams sit, the number 1 and 2 seed are likely going to be, probably the Lions, and then whoever wins the NFC East between the Eagles and Commanders. The 3 and 4 seed going to be the NFC South winner and the NFC West winner. The 5th seed, again, whoever loses the NFC East between Washington and Philadelphia. The 6th seed, likely the Vikings at this point. They are 7-2, currently hold the 5 seed actually over the Commanders. And then you get to the 7th seed, and it's a battle between teams like the Packers, the 49ers, the Rams. Even though they lost last night, the Seahawks are not out of it. And then you also have the Bucs, who are not totally dead to win the NFC South. They're effectively 3 games back of the Falcons because they lost both of their games against Atlanta and have 2 more losses than them. But all of those teams are in contention right now to still make the playoffs. So there's a lot left to be decided. I hate to say this, but I think the Packers are the best bet to not make the playoffs right now. They're currently plus 225 not to make the playoffs. They are currently the number 7 seed at 6-3. But there's a couple of things. One, some of their wins are a little bit fraudulent. they got really lucky early on in the season with the number of turnovers they were forcing and the lack of turnovers that they had on offense. Two, Jordan Love has been banged up all year, and there is a definitely higher probability of him re-aggravating some sort of injury. And as well as Malik Willis played earlier this season, he is certainly a downgrade from Jordan Love. They also have the seventh most difficult strength of schedule the rest of the way. They have games against the Vikings and the Lions again. That will be no easy feats by any means. So again, at plus 225 for them not to make the playoffs, I just think there's a better chance that potentially like the 49ers sneak into that seventh spot, or the Cardinals continue to play well. And again, it pains me to say that, but
No, I understand.
that's what I think like right now.
And that feels right to me. I could also see the Vikings kind of falling apart at the end with Darnold. Like, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. And if you
Yeah.
look at, look, Green Bay controls their own destiny. They're going to Detroit, then they go to Minnesota, and they have the Bears. So all these are the road games they have, and they're 2 games with the Bears. So if you sweep both games with the Bears and you split the Minnesota Detroit one, you got a puncher's chance, because there's also the theory where you could look at either the Eagles falling apart a little bit if they don't play well against the Commanders, or vice versa if the Commanders, maybe Cinderella starts to, lose the glass slipper here a little bit and start to show really who they are, maybe
Yeah.
underneath. So this is a really pivotal week where I think Green Bay really has to take care of its business, and then we might get a couple other answers on some things here, at least
Yeah.
temporarily. But that's definitely one to watch, and I like that. See, even though Sam has his fandom, I have my fandom. We're all business at Betting Pros. We put that all aside, man. This is all about making some money. All right, let's get to the stats that are going to make us some money. Let's start with the Chargers and Bengals. Sam, I hate this game because to me, this is one of those true 4 outcome games where you could see it going over, you could see it going under, you could see either team winning. I hate those games. I typically don't invest in them. So, that being said, what do you have lined up to maybe convince me otherwise? Because I'm actually really curious, because I want to be involved in this game, but my goodness, those 4 outcome situations, I tend to run for the hills.
Yeah. So I want to look at the Chargers defense specifically. They are often considered a top 5 defense. They are third in EPA per play allowed, sixth in success rate allowed, ninth in DVOA, and they have allowed a positive EPA per play in just 3 games against Pittsburgh, Arizona, and funny enough, this past week against Tennessee. Though I think a lot of that came in garbage time. But you look at some of the offenses that they faced. I mean, Las Vegas early in the season, Carolina, Denver, New Orleans, Cleveland. Like, this is not a tough schedule to be having this much success against opposing offenses. And again, that's Saints game was without Derek Carr. So they now face Cincinnati, who is seventh in EPA per play on offense. We've seen what they can do on Thursday Night Football last week. So I like Cincinnati's team total over. I don't remember what it is right now. You know, I just think they have the bandwidth to get over this, to really take advantage of this Chargers defense and sort of point out that they are sort of a victim of, or I guess beneficiaries of, a softer schedule.
All right, let's get to the Titans game here. They're going to be at home against the Minnesota Vikings. Titans defense, certainly has some talent on it, and the Titans are a very difficult team because I could see them covering the 6 at home here. Like, that's not out of their own possibilities, except for the fact you also see how they've struggled against more potent offenses. They got destroyed by the Lions. The Bills put up 34 on them. Kind of looking around. But then there's also the trend of you're seeing with the Minnesota Vikings too, which is they should have smashed last week. And Darnold made a ton of mistakes, but that was a smash matchup if ever there was one. And to put up 12 is just, unforgivable. I mean, is that the right word? I don't know what the right word is, but it feels like the right word. Sam, when it comes to the Titans here, what's a number here that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah. So on the season, again, the Titans defense has been playing pretty well, but it has gotten a little bit worse. Overall this year, they are third in yards per play allowed. They are allowing the fewest yards per game. They are 7th in success rate, 12th in EPA per play, and 11th in DVOA. But they only have 6 turnovers, which is the third fewest behind just the Raiders and the Browns. And they have the 4th worst points per game allowed. So they're not allowing a lot of yards, but they're allowing a lot of points. Now, why is that? There's 2 reasons. One, Will Levis and Mason Rudolph are giving their opponents very short fields. They're throwing interceptions. They're turning the ball over on offense, setting up the opposing offense for quick success. Their special teams is doing the same thing. They are by far the worst special teams unit in the league. They rank last in special teams DVOA. Last year, the Rams had one of the worst special teams, I think, historically, and they were at a negative 9.2% DVOA on the season. The Titans this year are a negative 15.2%. So not good at all. I mean, you saw a couple weeks ago that the Lions game you mentioned, how much, kick return yardage they were giving up to them. It is just not great. I think now is a perfect buy spot for Minnesota because, again, they were moving the ball against Jacksonville. They got into the red zone. It was just the turnovers that really got to them. Obviously having to settle for field goals as well. But I think, again, it's sort of a buy low, sell high sort of situation here where I want to buy in on the Minnesota Vikings. Sam Darnold is definitely not looking as great as he was earlier in the season, but I still think this offense is better than what they showed last week, and against the Titans defense that has shown its warts in the past.
I got a question for you. It's off topic, but it's kind of Darnold topic. Who do you see having the better future in the NFL the next couple of years, Sam Darnold or Justin Fields, based off what you saw this season?
That is off topic and a very difficult question.
Provocative question, right? That's why I asked it.
It's difficult because Darnold is really probably only starting this year because JJ McCarthy got hurt. I think there's a chance Darnold starts off next season as the starter, depending on how McCarthy's recovery goes well. But I honestly think that executives and general managers and stuff are going to lean more into wanting to trust Darnold a little bit more than Justin Fields. Again, I think both of them need to be in the right situation.
Sure.
To
of
really
course.
thrive.
And you can argue they haven't all quite, Darnold's been in the best situation he could possibly be in. I think Fields still, I'm holding out hope there based on what I've seen this year. I still don't see why they made the pivot. I know Russell Wilson's 3-0, but we'll see. I want to see when it faces a better secondary what happens, because so far, everyone's just kind of just letting them toss balls over guys' heads and just roll my eyes.
He's not going to be facing this better secondary this week. So.
No, I know. That's why it's going to be another one where he just looks good. And these 50-50 balls, eventually the other 50 wins sometimes. Last one here before we get the survivor pool pick of the week. Chiefs and Bills. This is easy for me. Patrick Mahomes is an underdog. Lock it. This was 1.5 yesterday of him as the underdog. Now it's 2.5. So I bet it again. So I'm just, please, all of the possible underdog Mahomes I can get. This is how I made all my playoff money last year. Sam, what do you have to add on this big marquee 4:25 Eastern matchup that everybody's going to be stopping everything they're doing to watch?
Yeah, so I just got to say it right now. Patrick Mahomes, as an underdog in his career, 12-3 straight up, 13-1-1 against the spread. I mean, it's easy to go to him as an underdog. The Bills, again,
they're undefeated, Sam.
They're undefeated. They
got no respect.
They probably shouldn't be, based on last week.
But they are. But when does it matter that they find ways to win? When does it matter that on all three aspects and the coaching, they find ways to win? Shouldn't that matter?
It does. And I think if you think about the way the Chiefs are built now, it is very different than 3-4 years ago. 3-4 years ago, It was 2 to 3 play drives where they're scoring at will. now they are marching down the field. They are meticulous. They are, racking up first downs and are, success rating these opposing defenses to death. And so I do think that makes for a more stable offensive environment, right? Like if you're consistently moving the ball and stuff like that, like it's easier to consistently, you're going to have a higher floor is what I'm trying to say. And so with as good as their defense is, having a high floor plus a high floor offense is just going to result in a lot of wins. But getting back to this game specifically, both teams have actually been a little bit more pass heavy the last several weeks. They're both top 3 in pass rate over expectation in the last 4 weeks. And I think through the air is how both of these offenses need to move the ball against the opposing defenses. The Bills' run defense has been extremely stout lately, obviously led up a big run to Jonathan Taylor last week, but they are first in rushing EPA per play allowed the last four weeks. And I think the Chiefs, if they want to win, are going to need to pass the ball. There are some key injuries on both offenses. Keon Coleman for the Bills already ruled out. Dalton Kincaid and Amari Cooper, both still questionable. So again, if the Bills are without all 3 of those players, they're going to be looking to Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel and Matt Collins, which is not great. And then on the Chiefs side, left tackle Wanya Morris left week 10 with a knee injury. Juju Smith-Schuster, obviously not a huge part of the offense, but gives them some depth at wide receiver as well. So I think a lot of injuries, specifically on the Bills side, that really make a big difference as to what side you want to bet on. Again, the Bills being 1.5, 2.5 point favorites. Again, it depends on where you look right now. They're essentially saying that these teams are even on a neutral field, which I feels about right. And they're 2 different teams, but yeah, this is going to be a fun one. I'm excited.
Chiefs money line. Lock it up, folks. Lock it up. Also, this literally just came over the wire while you were talking. I was looking at it. The Chiefs are designating Isaiah Pacheco to return from the IR. That's speedy. So yeah. I don't know how much that enters in, if he's going to play. We saw Nico Collins get designated to return, but he didn't. So before we get our hopes up and that's changing anything, again, follow along to figure that out. Last but not least here, Survivor Pool Pick of the Week. Let's go deep to the heart of Texas here, because the Dallas Cowboys are falling apart at the seams, Sammy. And Houston could certainly use a win. Talk about timing, right? This feels like the best possible time for the Houston Texans to catch the Cowboys, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans here. Keep it short and simple. I do think the Texans are like a mid-tier team right now as they're currently constructed, but they get to play Cooper Rush / Trey Lance, and they have a top 5 defense. The defense is still playing outstanding. I don't see a world in which the Cowboys score more than 14 points, and I think the Texans offense has enough to outscore them. So easy, lock it up. Give me the Texans.
There you go, everybody. Make sure you follow Sam over on BettingPros, and make sure you also check out all of his work there at bettingpros.com too. Some great write-ups and things going on there. And download the BP app. Use the tools, use the systems, use the line alerts, use everything. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then also wherever you get your podcast of Betting Pros. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Sam Hoppen, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.